recording.
Okay, so we should go ahead and get started then?
We should.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ergen. And so tonight, we're going to hear from Nicaragua and Uruguay, the rare disease activities, the collaborations, and the opportunities for future work. So I'll ask both Gerardo and Victor to give a brief, explanation of your past and what you're doing now, and then go right into your presentation. So it will change. Are we all set to switch the screen okay then? Or Gerardo, can you just pick it up then and share the screen?
My guess is that it's compartir pantalla en español y hay que seleccionar lo que quieres que mostrarnos.
And Gerardo, you are on mute.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep, that's all right.
there you are.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this initiative. I try to present in 20 minutes, and I put in my presentation past, present, and future of genetics in Nicaragua. Okay. My objectives is present a historical overview of the development of genetics in Nicaragua, present the current situation, and show the ideas about the development in the future. Nicaragua is in Central America, have a population of 6,016, 113 square kilometers. We speak Spanish, and in the coast, in the Atlantic coast, the Caribbean coast, have people that speak English and indigenous language. We have a PIB by 1,000, excuse me, $91.30, and we have a health system. It's mixed health system, public, social security, and private. This is a map from Nicaragua. In the north is Honduras, in the south Costa Rica, and the west Pacific Ocean, and the west Caribbean Sea. Okay, in 1973, Dr. Fabio Salamanca from the university in León, it's a main city in Nicaragua, was 2 weeks in Mexico in training in genetics, very short. Other doctor, pediatric, Francisco Narvaez, have a fellowship in Spain, 3 weeks. Dr. Romeo Segueda, pediatric and neonatology, a natural dysmorphologist. He was died, and he has a special dedication for the dysmorphologists. Doctora Ileana Ponce from UNAM Managua, the National University, was in Santiago de Chile, 93, 95, and myself in Guadalajara, Jalisco, 95, 97. The modern time, 2011 and 2012, 4 medical doctors was in UNAM León in master degree in genetics. In 2013, 9 medical doctors returned to the country from Cuba. They was training in genetic counselors. In Nicaragua, we don't have a formal education in genetics. In 2050, 2 medical doctors returned to the country from Cuba, clinical geneticists, and all our work in our system actually. For myself, 2 important persons in my training, Dr. Victor Penchesade from Argentina and Chema Cantú, head of the genetics in CIBO-IMSS, when I was to my training. Okay, in 1995, Dr. Ponce began consult at the National Children's Hospital some days of the week, but she mainly worked in medical school. In Nicaragua, the hospitals are property of the Minister of Health. The university don't have hospitals, only they have certification for the doctors. Around the 2000 or 2001, Dr. Ponce left for the United States. In 1997, began formally the genetic class in private universities. And in 1999 was the time when we start in a non-governmental organization. The name is SNIC, that consultation of genetics. In this time, we began international consultations with doctors in many countries, and we obtain help for samples, free cost. And this time, the support of the government and the health minister is was very poor. Okay. In 2004, we developed a project about child with spina bifida with Italian foundation, Fundación Mariani. In 2006, consultation start in child hospital, and we involve pediatrics in participate. Actually, these doctors are working in pediatric hemato-oncology and other areas. Okay. This is the doctors that study in Cuba. It's when they return to country. This is the clinical geneticist that study in Cuba. Okay. Our main work in genetics is with congenital anomalies. We don't have a program of metabolic diseases. We don't make metabolic screening. The strong is more in congenital anomalies. was very difficult for us establish a strong register for anomalies, congenital anomalies, but actually we have a good congenital anomalies register. We need better in this file. Actually, we are in international clearinghouse, but only for participate. We don't send dates actually. Okay. This is a general date from our newborn with congenital anomalies. We have approximately 130 newborn live newborn per year, and approximately 1,000 births with congenital anomalies. We have a rate, a low rate, really, I don't know, is a short time to make conclusions, but when I compare with other register like Costa Rica, Mexico, Argentina, we have a low rate. Mainly nervous system, musculoskeletal system, and cardiac system, the main anomalies. Okay, we made a international congress, began in 2018. We invite speakers, international speakers, and the public are doctors, mainly pediatrician. We developed in 2008 a cytogenetic lab. Before 2008, we can make a karyotype. We don't have other kind of genetic studies, only karyotype. We don't can make a molecular test. If we want obtain a molecular diagnosis, we need obtain help, external help. Okay, the second Congress was in 2019. And we have support of many famous geneticists, Dr. Lionel van Maldergem from Belgium and work in France. He was in Nicaragua, October 2013, and collaborate with us in evaluate child with we don't have the experience, or we don't have so before. With the collaboration with Dr. Van Maldergem, we saw this family. This family have 3 adults with intellectual disability. We sent the sample, we sent the information, and obtain a publication about EQ-SEC2 disorder, a gene in X chromosome that the mother was the carrier. This is other case that we send samples to Dr. Van Maldergem, progeria-like. We study this child with doctora in Marseille, France, and have other publication. Dr. Michael Dean is a scientific investigator from National Institute of Health. He has helped us a lot with molecular tests in cancer. He has been to Nicaragua many times and collaborate with us. This is a publication product of the studies with Dr. Dean. This is imagine of the or third Congress, National Congress of Genetics. Dr. Uros Landik from Bird Foundation, Mauro Bashirotto Institute. We help us in diagnosis in Prader-Willi, Engelmann, and Lesch-Nyhan. All studies free. We send samples, dry spot blood samples, and we obtain the report by mail. Very simple, but actually we have problem with the postal mail. We don't can send more samples by security. Child was diagnosed with Dr. Hladin, Prader-Willi, Lesch-Nyhan, Dr. Roberto Giuliani from Brazil, Porto Alegre. He has helped us in lysosomal diseases, mucopolysaccharidosis, Tay-Sachs, Gaucher. He was in Nicaragua in 2019. Patient that we diagnosis, MPS 1, mucopolysaccharidosis 2, 4, Tay-Sachs disease. And this is our first case in Nicaragua in Gaucher disease. Actually, we wait for charitable therapy for this child. We made the application and okay, do you know the therapy are very expensive and the families don't have, and the government don't have program to help this kind of disease. Our collaboration with RENAC, the system of congenital anomalies from Argentina, Dr. Barbero, Dr. Boris, and Paloma, Rosa, help us in this morphology. This patient born recently, 3 months ago. We made exercise like photos and x-rays, and our conclusion is Schinzel-Phocomelia syndrome, but we don't have the molecular test, only clinical, is suspect. Dr. Superti Furga for Switzerland, he has collaborated with us in discussion and consultation of the patient with skeletal dysplasia. And we have an interest discovery, 4 different families that live in the same area, geographic area, then clinical and molecular study with Digbe Melchior Clausen. Dr. Superti Furga think that this was a founder mutation, and we work in prepare a paper for publication too. This is the other child, and the molecular test. We send the sample to Switzerland, and they make the study. And for finish, we work in prenatal genetics, start in 2019. We work with the doctors in gynecobstetrics, perinatal and fetal medicine. once a year, we carry out a teaching course for resident doctor of obstetricia and gynecology. And we have 4 clinical geneticists actually in different cities, 6 genetic counselors, and 1 cytogeneticist. We made genetic consultation in 3 hospitals in Managua, in other 7 hospitals out of the capital. The only laboratory cytogenetics lab is in Managua, the capital. And we have a network with consultation with colleagues from Brazil, Argentina, France, Estados Unidos, Italia, and participate in Latin American network for congenital anomalies, and use really very little consultation by Face2Gene. I have a good experience with Face2Gene, but in other occasion, no good experience. Okay, our plans for the future made a course for medical doctors, maybe a master degree. We work in this. Make studies in amniotic fluid to support the fetal surgeries that was began in Nicaragua this year. Improve and expand our network to other hospitals about the anomalies, congenital anomalies, and develop biochemical and molecular diagnostic for other conditions, metabolic and molecular, maybe in this or maybe the next year. Okay, thank you. I don't put information about the legislation, but we don't have legislation specific from genetic disease. We have a legislation about wide in medicine from all the patient. Nicaragua have a health system that and public system is free. The people don't pay money for the attention. And this is very hard, very difficult for all the people, and mainly for the cost of the genetic therapies. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mejia. Are there any questions or comments from those who are present?
I have a quick question, Gerardo. If you could go back to the slide that I think was called general data that showed the congenital anomalies per year.
Excuse me, I don't understand the
Okay,
question.
Gerardo, muéstrame la hoja con general data de las anomalías congenitales con, no me recuerdo los años del 2016 al, no, no es esta.
Okay, all right.
Más atrás.
Es la frecuencia de casos por año.
Así es, así es. No, no es esta. Es la que
Número.
está arriba. Sí. So you said that congenital anomalies were much rarer in Nicaragua than in other countries. And I note when I look at the data that you're showing that the frequency per 10,000 live births is in fact decreasing also. Is there an issue with diagnosis
Yeah.
in Nicaragua or why is that?
Okay. In the first years, the doctors report all, for example, syndactyly, only syndactyly, soft syndactyly, or for example, low seed air. we work in, don't include this condition that are minor anomalies. This is a possible explication about this change.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Please, if you have a question, just unmute your mic and just ask the question.
A mí me interesa saber, porque no me quedó claro si hacían la prueba del talón en los niños al nacer.
No. We don't have a metabolic screening program.
Posiblemente eso explicaría la incidencia relativamente más baja.
Sí, pero en este caso nosotros reportamos anomalías estructurales más, doctor. No metabólicas meramente, sino estructurales.
Gracias.
¿Cómo no?
Javier raised his hand.
Sí, buenas, doctor. Me quería preguntarle dos cosas. Una, tenía entendido que en Nicaragua se iba a iniciar, o por lo menos en noticia de 2019, un registro de pacientes. No sé si esto se ha llevado a cabo finalmente. Y por otro lado, si conoce si existe movimiento asociativo de entidades que trabajan por enfermedades raras en Nicaragua.
Sí, de pacientes se refiere a pacientes de condiciones genéticas, el registro.
Sí.
Bueno, nosotros tenemos un registro de pacientes con condiciones genéticas en el Hospital de Niños de Nicaragua. No tenemos uno único a nivel nacional. Lo tenemos, por ejemplo, yo llevo el de Managua, otro doctor lleva el de León, cada uno de los que atiende llevan, pero no lo tenemos unificado. La verdad. En el caso del movimiento asociativo, igual aquí tenemos asociaciones, pero que trabajan más bien por discapacidad, no tanto por problemas genéticos en particular. Recientemente se ha organizado algo más sobre autismo. Entonces, algunas veces hay pacientes con problemas genéticos que tienen comportamiento autístico que están incluidos en esas asociaciones. O, por ejemplo, en las que atienden discapacidad en general, están niños y familias con distrofias musculares, con diversas condiciones, pero no hay una organización de problemas genéticos en particular. O, por ejemplo, de enfermedades raras. No existe una con ese nombre.
Gracias, doctor.
¿Cómo no?
Other questions or comments?
Luis, are you asking a question? If you are, you need to unmute.
Ya, ok. Ustedes han hecho un esfuerzo enorme para llegar al diagnóstico en las enfermedades metabólicas, pero ¿qué planes tienen para tratar de resolver el problema localmente y no depender de tantas personas que les ayudan en el exterior?
Bueno, como usted sabe, el diagnóstico genético molecular y metabólico es muy amplio. Y bueno, una de las cosas que hemos pensado realizar es desarrollar, por ejemplo, hacer estudios de aminoácidos en plasma, ácidos orgánicos en orina, porque no tenemos eso tampoco. Entonces, cuando tenemos pacientes que tienen comportamientos que recuerdan una acidemia orgánica, una aminoacidopatía, hacemos amonio, hacemos lactato, hacemos metabolitos, pero hasta ahí llegamos, ¿verdad? No podemos llegar a conclusiones. Esa es una de las cosas que pretendemos hacer. Y lo otro es que a partir de esta información que estamos recabando de las condiciones genéticas, tratar de seleccionar algunas de las más frecuentes para ir haciéndolo en la parte molecular. Por ejemplo, equifrágil, consideramos que es una de las cosas importantes de hacer porque hay muchos pacientes varón con alteraciones intelectuales y podría ser algo que nos podría ayudar. Pero realmente es muy difícil cubrir todo, ¿verdad? Es bastante difícil, sobre todo cuando no hay tantos recursos destinados para ello.
En ese sentido, valdría la pena pensar en una ley o en un plan eh, a largo plazo o qué están considerando ustedes.
Sí, yo creo que sí, sí valdría la pena verlo desde el punto de vista legislativo, que yo le decía que no hay nada específico sobre genética en particular.
I think had a question.
Hola,
Muchas
buenas
gracias.
tardes. Hola, hola, soy Gabriela Repeto de Chile. Mucho gusto y muchas gracias
Igual.
por la presentación. Que escuchamos mencionar que ustedes han tenido como muchos contactos internacionales que sin duda han permitido avances en el área y soluciones para algunos pacientes. Yo quería preguntar por otros vínculos con sus vecinos. Estábamos recién hablando, el doctor Barrera preguntó recién por pesquisa neonatal y sabemos, por ejemplo, que Costa Rica tiene un programa grande, bien armado y con varios años de trayectoria. Entonces quería saber si ustedes tienen algún vínculo con sus países vecinos. So I was asking about interaction with their neighboring countries, particularly with Costa Rica, that has a long history of newborn screening.
Sí, yo de manera personal sí tengo comunicación con, por ejemplo, con el doctor Saborío Roquefort en Costa Rica, pero en alguna ocasión intentamos ver la posibilidad, incluso el doctor Saborío en algunas ocasiones nos ayudó con algunos exámenes, pero el problema es que Costa Rica esto lo tiene, creo que todos conocen el sistema de Costa Rica, es la caja del Seguro Social, y es bastante cerrado hacia Costa Rica, ¿verdad? Entonces, resultaba muy difícil, o sigue resultando muy difícil poder tener acceso a servicios, aunque sea incluso pagándolos en Costa Rica. No sé, el doctor que estaba acá por Costa Rica escuchándonos, si pudiera decir, pero eso es lo que en algún momento nos pasó. Entonces, algunas veces consultamos casos, pero realizar estudios ha sido difícil. Lo que nosotros pensamos, pues, es ir empezando a desarrollar un programa de tamizaje neonatal, empezando con cosas un poco sencillas, como hipotiroidismo, como hiperplasia suprarrenal congénita, empezar a irlo ampliando en la medida de las posibilidades.
Okay, I think we'll move on to Dr. Raggio from Uruguay. If there are no other questions, and if there are other questions at the end of the session, we can then bring them back to you then, Dr. Mejia, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So we'll have to share your screen back, I guess. There you go. Thank you.
Are you getting it okay?
Yep.
Yes, yes.
Great. Just let me put in presentations. Okay, my name is Victor. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for coming here. I'm also a medical geneticist. I'm professor at the School of Medicine. It's the public university here, the first School of Medicine and the biggest one. So I will try to, as you request, to give a glimpse of the panorama on rare disease, especially genetic diseases, but I will try to talk a little bit about rare disease in general in Uruguay. First off, the country. Those are data from Wikipedia, but you have the map. It's the smallest country in South America, and with a population which is roughly 3.5 million, and some international coefficients which gives an idea of the country. And the position in the, sorry. So the PAD is gross international product per capita and index of human development, which is rather good, and the Gini coefficient, which is roughly in the middle. It's a small country with small population, which that's good for some things and bad for others. I will try to show to you. This is natality in the past few years, which is decreasing markedly in the last years. And it's a small population and a population which is not growing much in the last year and in the prospection. This is data on infant mortality. The 2019 is the last year we have data right now. It's 6.8 per thousand births. It is a really good number, and as you can see, roughly a third of infant mortality is due to congenital anomalies and chromosomal anomalies. This is the way it's coded, the data here. We have, as I will show in a minute, we don't have a good register of congenital anomalies or genetic diseases. The best data I can show you is this one regarding genetics, because it's the data on infant mortality, which is, of course, taken in good consideration. Statistics, it's a problem in genetics especially, not in other areas, but in genetics it's a special problem, and this is one of the best data I can show you right now. I want to show you the people and institutions which are working in rare disease here and in genetic diseases, and trying to put the web page so you can check them or even contact them. And these are the most important, basically. Universidad de la República is the main university, the public university. The main school of medicine where I work is part of the Universidad de la República. I will show you some about CRENADECER. It's the National Reference Center for Rare Disease and Congenital Defects, which is part of public health security. And of course, the public health system, which is ASE, Administración de Servicios de Salud del Estado, is the public health system which has a very good coverage. There are some research institutions which, of course, can work in rare disease and genetic diseases, and in fact, they do that. These research institutions are in the university, science, medicine, chemistry, and other schools have research groups working in genetic diseases, and in particular, the two research institutions, which are Institut Pasteur Montevideo and Instituto de Investigaciones Biológicas Clemente Estable, IPSE for short. Those are purely research institutions here in Montevideo, capital of Uruguay. Institut Pasteur, as you may know, in France, have a network of institutes in Asia, Africa, South America, and Montevideo is one of the sites. It began to work in 2005, I believe. And there are some institutions in the private sector which are or have worked in genetic diseases also. The Ort University has a program in biotechnology, so there are some people working in genetics, and there are some, I will show you in a minute, some clinic and genetic labs in the private sector working here. This is my own map of clinical genetic services in Uruguay. I'm reporting here the institutions and places where genetic consultation is done, okay? I will talk a little bit later about labs on. In the public sector, do you see the arrow here? Okay. In the public sector, we have a genetic consultation in CHPR, which is the biggest infant and women's hospital in the public sector. And we have a clinic in pediatrics and in prenatal genetics. Crenadecer is also public and has genetic consultations in congenital anomalies and rare disease in general. I will show you a little bit later. Hospital Militar has its own genetics lab and genetics consultations, and it covers health for the military. And the Comisión Honoraria para la Salud Cardiovascular, it's a parastatal organization, it's public, and it has some programs in cardiovascular diseases and cardiovascular prevention, and they have a program on cardiovascular genetics, mainly on primary dyslipidemias. Especially in the area of cancer, there are 3 groups working in ASEGO, which is in the Women's Hospital. The oncology department in the School of Medicine has a program on hereditary cancer. And this group in the Hospital Militar also has a program specific to colon cancer, digestive hereditary cancer. And there are some private institutions, both YAMS, this is, sorry, we call it mutualistas, which is prepaid and collaborative health coverage. And some of them have their own genetic consultation clinics. And there are some enterprises in the private sector which give as a service, and they sell as a service, genetic consultation and also genetic lab and some tests. The ones marked in red are the ones in which I am involved somehow. I try to collaborate in many areas. My work is centered mainly at the School of Medicine at the university, but this group, ASEGO, is only supported by the university, but I collaborate in some private institutions. There are a couple of patients' organizations. Atueru, it's the main organization of patients with rare disease. Actually, that's the name is Todos Unidos por las Enfermedades Raras Uruguay, all united by 4 rare diseases in Uruguay. Sadly, they were thinking to connect and tell us a little bit about their work, but they have some trouble. They couldn't make it, and so they asked me to complement their part. We have to bear in mind that most of the people are mothers and fathers of people with genetic diseases or rare diseases, so they have a lot of family health issues to deal with, mostly at this time. And FUPIER is another organization. I'm collaborating with them, among other people. It's an organization mostly focused on promote investigation, research on rare diseases. Atuero is most a traditional patients organization for support, information, etc. FUPIER is more foundation which is trying to promote research in genetics and rare diseases. I will share with you some ideas. I have my view on the problem of genetic and rare diseases in Uruguay. I like to see as ups and downs what we have balance, which are a problem or a strength in genetics. The ups in general is that we have a very good health system with high health coverage for all the population. I mean, no one is left behind. You can have the most expensive private health coverage, but you can have the public health coverage, which is good. Another up is that we have, I think, very good doctors in general medicine and in many specialties which are important for genetics: neurology, hematology, pediatric neurology, oncology, and so on. And we can interact with them without trouble, and they can provide us with their vision and their examination of the patients or laboratory studies, imaginology, and we have a very good interaction with them. And we have a very good laboratories around. We can interact without problem. We have accessible, mostly free, tertiary and postgraduate education in medicine, biology, biotechnology, chemistry, bioinformatics. And so we have very good human resources in that areas. And again, we can interact very good with them from academia, from medicine, with these professions. And we have, therefore, good non-medical human resources. We can work with rare disease and genetics, very good, molecular biology, cytogenetics, biochemistry, bioinformatics, and so on. We have some, regarding tech platforms, the situation is more or less, I put a plus and a minus sign, because we have some good platforms for some things, and but we lack others. But again, you can interact with groups which are in Brazil, Argentina, and eventually in other places, and actually we do that. Dr. Mejia take his time to read the people who collaborated with him and collaborated with his country. I didn't put that specifically in my presentation, but of course we have a lot of collaboration from abroad, from Brazil. I have to mention Dr. Giuliani, of course, from Argentina, from Spain, Mexico, and United States, Europe, and so on. Another app, continuing with apps specific in rare and genetic diseases, we have a very high coverage neonatal screening, and it is working. It has been working for 20 years, more or less, and it's rather good, really good. We have CRENADESER, which is a reference center specifically for rare disease and congenital anomalies. It has its problems and limitations. I will talk about it in a minute, but it's a very good thing. We are widely available and mostly free educational resources in genetics, genomics, biotechnology, bioinformatics, biochemistry, etc. Also basic diagnostic or medical. Of course, you can do you can have education abroad. We have a lot of people who studied abroad and came back. So you can study a lot of things in Uruguay, and of course you can get better doing something else in other places. We have some genetic and genetic counseling clinics. In my opinion, nearly enough. We should have some more, but in my opinion, we are reaching the needs of the small country. I did, from memory, a census of human resources in genetics in Uruguay, and in my count, we have 13 medical geneticists, two women actually, which are from Cuba, and they migrate to Uruguay, and they are working and have a formation as clinical geneticists in Cuba. And there are 6 people in formation in medical genetics, medical doctors, which are specializing in human genetics. I need to have a note here. We don't have a proper specialization program in genetics. Specialization programs in Uruguay takes 3-4 years, depending on the discipline. We have a program which we call Diploma, which is a short program, 3 semesters, a year and a half, as the first step towards a specialization in genetics. When I say there are 6 people in 6 medical doctors, the information they are doing these programs, which of course is the first step towards a specialization in genetics. And we have more or less 15 people, which I think are very good senior laboratory, have a very good laboratory profile. They are seniors and they can run laboratory in genetics, cytogenetics, biochemistry. That I'm talking about diagnostic lab. Of course, there are, in addition, some research labs which I'm not considering here, but we can interact with them. And we have some successful pilot programs in genetics. Genico is a program on familial hypercholesterolemia, which I worked for 13 years in that program. Urogenomes, it's a program which I'm collaborating with in Institut Pasteur Montevideo, and we are doing some whole genome and whole exome sequencing for the diagnosis of rare genetic diseases. And there are some problems I showed you in a couple of slides before, some pilot programs in cancer predisposition syndromes, both breast and ovary cancer and digestive cancer. Having a pilot programs, at least in some area, in my opinion, is very important. You can learn to do it, you can show that it works, and then it's just make it bigger. And I think these 3 programs, probably there are some more, are, in my opinion, successful. As I said, we have a very good neonatal screening program. It's good in the variety of diseases it tackles, and it's good especially in its coverage. I mean, it's exceptional that our child is outside the screening program. It began with congenital hypothyroidism in 1994, was the first one. Then it added phenylketonuria, and from 2007, the BPS, which is Social Security, took care of the program, and it added adrenal hyperplasia, cystic fibrosis, and amino acids, organic acidemia, fatty acid beta oxidation disorders, and they have a running a very good and high coverage neonatal screening, and they have the follow-up for the children who are detected by this program. Downs, the problems and limitations we have, which are not new and we are not very inventive, are the same as everybody else. PIAS is the, I don't know how to translate it, but it's what the health system and the health coverage pays for the users, both public or private. By law, they have to cover some things, some studies, some medications, and other things that they don't have to. PIAS does not include, for instance, genetic consultation. It's incredible, but it doesn't cover it. You can cover a consultation with any specialty, but not genetics. Anyway, most institutions actually, despite they are not legally, they have not the obligation to cover it. They actually do, because it's a good idea. I mean, it's cheaper at the end. So the public sector and most of the private sector, they cover for their users the consultations in medical genetics. But we have limitations in this regard, and the same is true for some genetic testing, both biochemical, genetic, genomics, and so on, which I will talk in a minute. We have especially poor statistics in genetics and rare disease. In fact, I think the only good statistic I can show you is the one I did, which is in infant mortality. But that's a problem. We have all the problems derived from being small. You might have all the beauties of being small and all the problems of being small. It's leave it or take it. It's just that way. And so, for instance, you will never have in Uruguay a clinic specialized super specialized in something, in some disease. You will have 3 cases in a year. It wouldn't make sense. So we have problem with hyper specialization because the small numbers. The same is true for some technology. We have some excessive centralization in Montevideo, which is the capital city, and it is in the south of the country. That's of course a problem for some people, but being the country so small, you can travel it in 6 hours. It's not such a big issue. In Uruguay happens something which is peculiar. We have a very good idea in the medical community, in the authorities, of the importance of prevention in diseases, for cancer, for cardiovascular diseases, for infectious diseases. We have a very good vaccination program, including COVID-19 now, a very good vaccination program. But in genetics in particular, prevention is nobody talks about it. I don't know why, but the medical system, and especially authorities, does not know about prevention in medical genetics, and that's a problem. I will put you an example. We have the discussion, like any other countries, about the cost of the treatment for spinal muscular atrophy. Yeah. So we have, of course, the discussion is too expensive. We can cover it. We couldn't cover it, and the children with this terrible disease. In that discussion, nobody, but when I mean nobody, is nobody, talk about prevention. I mean, it's common sense. If you have a disease that will cost you $1 million in the first year for any patient, you will expect that somebody will ask, hey, wait a minute, can we prevent it? No, that question was not posed at the moment. And we have to make the mind shift that the same good idea that this prevents some diseases, it's also to try to prevent some genetic diseases. I leave out of what I said, the neonatal screening program, like I said, it's a very good one, but prevention for other diseases is not in the mind of especially the authorities. Of course, we have problems with diagnostic odysseys like everybody. I put a plus and a minus sign again because it's highly variable. It depends. Even it depends of luck in some cases, okay? But it depends on your coverage, your age, your luck to get to some programs, and your disease or your so you can have access to diagnosis techniques very easily or very difficult depending on a lot of issues. But it's a problem. I have patients with 15 years and I couldn't get a diagnosis in them. And I have patients with rare disease, rare genetic disease, in which we made the diagnosis in 2 months. It's highly variable, but of course it's a problem, diagnosis and access to diagnosis. A few years ago, with a professor, which is sadly now deceased, we made that book, which is in Spanish, of course. It's a history of the medical genetics in Uruguay. If you are interested, it can be read online. And of course, it begins in 19th century, with no one called that genetics, but there was a very interesting view on which we call now genetic etiology, and to our days. It's a book, it was published in 2010, so of course it needs a lot of updating in the last year. And I will finish talking about laws and regulation on rare diseases, which is the area I don't have any experience, but just like almost just like any other citizen reading the newspaper or watching the news. But we have the register for rare disease and congenital anomalies. It began in 2009, but it actually didn't work properly. And the best indication of that is that I don't have any statistic, it's not any statistic published on rare disease in Europe, or congenital anomalies, it's the same. It needs a lot of work and a lot of improvement to make it work, but it should be easy actually to do in such small and centralized country, but it didn't happen. Crenades started its work in 2014, but the same institution had been working from decades before in congenital anomalies, especially in surgery and all kind of support for the patient, from economic support, but also physiotherapy, physical therapy, and prostheses, and so on. In 2014, by law, they established as a reference center. They changed the way they work, and they expand the coverage for all rare diseases. They have some diseases which are you have the right to enter Crenades and have their attention only by having that disease. For instance, cystic fibrosis or inborn error of metabolism. If you have that disease, you can go to them. They will help you as much as they can to get the diagnosis and to get the treatment if available. But for other rare diseases, which of course are thousands of them, you have access limitations. If you are older than 14 years, if the symptoms are of late onset, you are not covered by them. And if you have a genetic rare disease where symptoms start after 14 years, you won't have coverage, or at least you will have difficulties to get the coverage. For instance, the parents of a patient won't have coverage for that. If you have a patient, you have a genetic disease, maybe you want to study their parents or give genetic counseling to their parents or give prevention measures to the parents, that's not covered. In 2017, there was an attempt to create a law on rare diseases, which didn't work. It was promoted by Atuero, the Association of Patients, and a legislator. And that was in the past government. Now the parliament changed, but it didn't work. It just didn't happen. I don't know why, but it didn't happen. Now they are trying to make another attempt on that. I gave them some ideas, some counseling, and they are trying to get ideas from all the people that can help them with that, and they will try to make another attempt to make a law and cover some things that are not covered right away. Yes, I'm finishing here. I hope it's useful for you, and I try to answer a question if there's any.
Hey, Dr. Raggio, I will send you some links to several things that we had done here many years ago before our legislation, and that may be helpful to people who are considering legislation. So, and then after you receive that, if they would like to talk a little bit in greater detail, I'll be happy to talk with them. So we'll send it off tomorrow morning. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, because I don't see that anybody here has an idea how a law on rare diseases should be done. Me, the less.
As I think everyone has experienced, it takes many years till you gain an acceptance by all parties. And I know it took us here in the United States 9 years until we worked through everything till we finally got our Orphan Drug Act in 1983. So it takes many years, but I think we can help, and I think others can help too. So please have them send responses and questions back, and we can stay in touch. So are there any questions then for Dr. Raggio? Luis, you have your hand up, and then I'll go through the list.
Yeah, yes, please. First, I would like to congratulate both presenters for the very informative presentation. Thank you very much. Regarding the last presentation, I have two questions. The screening program in Uruguay is one of the best in Latin America, and you had something like 28 diseases in the panel, but many of them, close to 22, were in the stage of research. Are they already incorporated for the whole population? That's the first question. And the second one, perhaps you explained, but I missed it. What is the difference between the public and the private sector? Is everyone in the public sector and the private is something adding to the benefits you have in the public, or some are covered by the private and some are covered by the public? And the other one is regarding the high-cost therapies, say enzyme replacement therapy and so on. How are they covered?
Yeah. Okay, I will try to explain it to you. Regarding the screening program, as far as I know, they report on hypothyroidism, phenylketonuria, adrenal hyperplasia, and I don't remember the other one. They always report that. In some cases, they have done some screening for falciform anemia, sickle cell disease. The other ones, the ones which are amino acids or organic acidemias or defects of beta oxidation, they don't report. But if the doctor asks for them when the patient has some symptoms or some problems, they will give you the results. So you can get a diagnosis that way. No? So the ones which can be treated, they report them immediately. The ones which won't need treatment or there are no treatment available, they will report if you ask for them. Yeah, in a diagnosis setting. I didn't explain well the health system in Uruguay. Historically, Uruguay has a very good health system, but in the last year it changed. You have a very good public health system you can access to if you need to, but most people, people who is working and giving some money to the government because they work, they have something which is called FONASA, Fondo Nacional de Salud. And then you have, with this FONASA, you can choose an institution which gives you coverage. You can choose the public institutions if you want to, or you can choose some, we call them mutualistas, which are prepaid and collaborative, collective health. So between the public sector or mutualistas is covered the, 95% of the population. If you want, and if you have the money, you can pay for private security health in addition, and you can do that if you want. Okay. But the good thing is that if you cannot pay, you have the public health system, which is good, and won't let you down. If you're working, most of the people is, and the coverage is for the worker and their kids. So they will have also a very good coverage. And if you have money, you don't have problems like anyone else. I'm making myself clear?
Yes, yes.
I'm not an expert on this, but more or less that's the picture. And regarding treatment and high cost treatment, we have something that is called Fondo Nacional de Salud Health Security Fund, which again, everybody who receives a salary has to pay a percentage for that. And the Fondo Nacional de Salud will pay you some expensive treatment if you need it. For instance, cardiac surgery, to put an example, or cancer therapy. Some genetic diseases are beginning to be covered by that Fondo Nacional de Salud, for instance, Gaucher, but many of them, there aren't. So the couple of years, I mean, 5 years to now, it began to happen what something which is new in Uruguay, which is the health demands to the judiciary system, legal demands to get a treatment. And there are some people that get a treatment making a legal demand to the state, for instance, for spinal muscular atrophy, some cancer treatments. And so it's shaking the system a little bit, and the country has to reassess which diseases and treatments will cover by any mechanism available, or which will leave out of the coverage, and it's your problem. This is an ongoing discussion right now. And of course, it's a very dynamic discussion right now because therapies are appearing every day. Spinal muscular atrophy is the best example for that. Currently, it's not covered, but there are a lot of legal demands and some successful ones, and are people receiving that treatment by legal obligation by the state.
And the same happened with MPS, mucopolysaccharide storage.
Honestly, I don't know. It's partially covered by the Fondo Nacional de Salud, but it's not all the treatments, all the available treatments. Some of them, I don't remember. Honestly, I don't know, but some therapies are covered for MPS 1 and some are not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Repeto? Dr. Repeto?
Hola, Víctor, un gusto verte. So this is a great presentation. Thank you. Very jealous of many of the things that you've told us today. So I wanted to ask you about the situation for clinical trials regarding rare diseases. This is a topic that we haven't touched upon in the previous country presentations, but I think it's also a relevant issue whether there are developments happening locally in Uruguay or if your country is being able to participate in trials from other countries. Thank you.
Yeah, the first thing I must say is I don't know about that. It's an area I really, it's outside of my field. But as far as I know, there are no local initiatives in clinical trials for genetic diseases, as far as I know. I don't know if there are some international clinical trials and some UAM patients are included. Probably there must be some. Actually, there were some a couple of years ago, And probably there are some UN patients included in international clinical trials. But honestly, I don't know. But, and again, regarding regulation of clinical trials, I cannot answer that, but I suppose it can be done. I mean, if the clinical trial is well done, the review board approves it, and you have the connection with local doctors to select the patients and do the follow-up, and it could be done if necessary.
Gabrielle, you bring up a very significant point. I think as we go on here, especially in the age of COVID infections, we're seeing so many of the clinical trials switch to decentralized clinical trials. So it really will be interesting to see what the impact is going to be on many of the countries that heretofore had not had the opportunity to participate in clinical trials, but they have patients. So I think we will be gaining a lot of experience, and I hope we can extend those clinical trials out to wherever there are patients. It certainly would be helpful to many people in so many countries. And then we get into a supply chain of making sure that there's ample product to be distributed and to be available for the patient. But we'll take one thing at a time. First, to try to get the decentralized trials open in many, many more countries. I think that'd be very helpful. Thank you for the question.
Yes, yes, indeed, it's a very important topic. I'm sorry, but I cannot tell you a lot about that because it's outside my area, but I think it can be done. The minimum infrastructure should be here in human resources, and the interaction could happen.
And I can do a real quick search tomorrow on clinical trials in Uruguay and clinicaltrials.gov to see exactly what might be available and what is ongoing. I can send that also.
Great.
Okay. Other questions, Em, please. Scroll through those who are in attendance because Jürgen left. He left.
So we can. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, got you full screen now, Victor. So that's good. Other questions, then. Thank you. And I'm afraid to push any buttons because I may cut everybody off, and I don't want to do that. So, other questions or comments for either Gerardo or Victor here this evening?
We have something in the chat, so let's check it. No, it's just.
Oh, Gabrielle, Gabrielle, you have your hand raised again, I hope.
Yeah. Yes, I have one quick question for Dr. Mejia. We've not been very successful. No, it's been difficult for us to locate other speakers such as you from Central America and the Caribbean. So if you could kindly help us, provide names. We have some spots that have not been filled out for these presentations, so that would be great. Entonces, si nos puede ayudar a contactar a más genetistas y especialistas del área en otros países de América Central y del Caribe, la verdad es que ha sido un tema en el cual todavía tenemos algunos espacios que llenar ahí de gente que no conocemos y podamos agrandar esta red. Lo apreciaríamos mucho.
Great comments and requests. I think on.
Sure.
Thank you. I think Dr. Lindsay Boras, is she or Lindsay still on the call yet tonight? I don't know, but we're scheduled to hear next time from the Dominican Republic and Honduras on July 6th. So please, any other suggestions for speakers from other countries that we've not listed? We're open. We're scheduled to go through middle of August with country-specific presentations, but we can always extend this if others volunteer to participate. So, are there any other questions or comments? If not, we can call it an evening, and I just want to mention Dick Salvatierra and Mariana Rico we're with America's Health Foundation. We're pursuing some extra some funding to sort of get us moving and keep us moving. So hopefully we'll have some news before too long on some sources of funding for the activities, which would be great. Okay, well, thank you to the speakers. We really appreciate you coming. I know it's a lot of trouble picking up subjects when you're not working on them every day, and you don't have your slide bank, all your slide decks that you go pick and choose slides. You have to construct new slides. So thank you very much for doing that. We appreciate that. So with that, we'll say buenas noches and go and enjoy the Copa America football games.
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on everyone. Okay. All righty. Thank you all very much then. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Bye-bye. Gracias.
Bye-bye.
And Ramaya, I'll send you the slides and everything too. Okay, thank you. Lindsay, are you still there?